Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're taking a look at some extremely fun battles in the Master League, featuring a fully maxed out Articuno, and it is hunting for Zygarde. These battles were submitted to the channel by a fellow content creator, Felrose, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, Articuno at level 50 gets to only 3450 combat power, so not typically a Pokemon that's recommended for climbing, but if it's hitting for double super effective damage, it's going to be able to pack a punch. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at level 50 Articuno as it finds its target in the first match, leading into Enamorus. Opponent is going to save switch into Zacian. Zacian throwing instantly on the CMP tie, and Articuno is forced to give up an early shield. But now the Zacian's defense has been debuffed. It's going to be 2 stages lowered. Icy Wind is going to connect. And now in comes Shadow Rhyperior. Shadow Rhyperior can survive a close combat here. It will be super effective damage, but it will not KO. Shadow Rhyperior, ever deadly, has the Rock Wrecker, going to go for a Breaking Swipe bait. The bait is successful. Opponent is going to give up a shield. The Rock Wrecker could have been reached. Opponent unable to get the farm down, so they're forced to go for the Sandsear Storm. In comes Articuno. Opponent now going to answer with Dialga, and Dialga will immediately be debuffed with the Icy Wind. Icy Wind is going to be no shielded. There's the switch to Palkia, but due to that attack drop, the opponent, they're just not doing the Dragon Breath damage that they typically would here. Aqua Tail is going to connect. Dialga able to survive on 1 HP, but that's not enough for a Draco Meteor. Just going to be the Iron Head. Palkia gets the farm down. In comes the Enamorus. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Hopping into the next game, bad lead Articuno into Mewtwo. Mewtwo, a particularly troublesome Pokemon, as it's able to output its Psystrike damage very, very quickly. Psystrike is going to be shielded. Articuno throwing on good timing, throwing 1 Ice Shard and the Icy Wind. Mewtwo does not have to shield here, and they know it. They are going to let that through. Nice timing by the opponent, firing off the Psystrike right before the Icy Wind is reached. Psystrike, even when debuffed, makes its presence felt. That is some serious damage. Icy Wind by the Articuno is going to connect. There's a switch and a snipe by the Shadow Rhyperior. Out comes Zacian, and Zacian is by no means a good response to Rhyperior. So if this is their best answer, then Rhyperior should have play in the back. Close combat is still going to do a ton of damage though, but Rhyperior still going to hang on. So Rhyperior gets to fire off the Rock Wrecker, pick up the KO. In the back is going to be Dialga. And now Articuno with the debuff can help Palkia try and sweep in the endgame. Is the opponent going to commit a shield here? Yes, they are. In comes the Palkia, and now it's going to be a guessing game for the opponent. The opponent is going to be hit with an Aqua Tail. They basically have to shield everything at this point, and they do. And it is going to be a CMP tie. Palkia lets it go, calls the Iron Head. Can Palkia get to this Aqua Tail? It's going to be close. The final shield coming up for Palkia, only a little bit of health remaining, getting as low as possible before trying to connect with the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is resisted, but it KOs Dialga, and despite the very scary lead, able to get the win. Moving into the next match, and there's a Pokemon that Articuno can hit for super effective damage as it leads into Rhyperior. But Rhyperior can return the favor with double super effective Rock Wrecker damage, and a threat of the one-hit KO will immediately force an early shield from Articuno. Articuno will return fire with the Icy Wind. Icy Wind, no shielded by the Rhyperior. Opponent is going to switch out into Zacian. Zacian does not throw right away, and that will allow Articuno to apply a very valuable Icy Wind debuff. And now in comes the Shadow Rhyperior. This is the test. Do they have close combat on the Zacian? No, they go for Play Rough. And Play Rough at -1 is survivable for the Rhyperior. Rhyperior again with the no shield, unfazed by the damage. It's very, very low, but able to double up on the Breaking Swipes. This is double resisted damage. Breaking Swipe does not KO, and there's a snipe from the opponent into Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu answered with the Articuno. Nature's Madness only going to hit for neutral damage here, but it will still leave quite a mark, as now Articuno is very close to the red HP. Articuno over farming the perfect amount, going for the Icy Wind. The opponent wants to get rid of this Articuno, whatever it takes. The remaining Pokemon all take super effective damage from Ice. Articuno with the immediate Icy Wind. Icy Wind is going to be shielded up by the Tapu Bulu. There's a switch to Rhyperior, and Rhyperior will, of course, be answered with the Palkia. And Palkia winning a cap tie, denying that Rock Wrecker. Down goes Rhyperior. Back in comes the Tapu Bulu, but it has so much work to do. Tapu Bulu is going to fire off a Nature's Madness. You can't even undercharge because then an Aqua Tail would be reached. Tapu Bulu trying to get to a move, but Articuno says no. Able to get the farm down and making it to an Icy Wind versus the Zacian. Articuno putting on a show in this endgame as it manages to get not one, but 2 KOs. We see a similar lead in the next match, but this time the Rhyperior is Shadow. Opponent going to save switch into the Zacian. Articuno, again, going to stay in, look to apply a debuff with the Icy Wind before sending in the Shadow Rhyperior. In comes Shadow Rhyperior, opponent firing off their energy right away. From this Zacian, it is going to be a Play Rough. And Play Rough, Rhyperior very okay with that. Rhyperior looking for the knockout blow with the Rock Wrecker. That's going to be no shielded, and down goes Zacian. Back in comes the Shadow Rhyperior. It's a battle of shadows, and look at the damage. Articuno answered by Palkia. Articuno looking to apply a debuff. The opponent goes for an Aqua Tail. This is fine. Articuno very happy to take that damage, as it's guaranteed to not be a Spatial Rend. Then you can debuff and bring in your own Palkia. And Palkia is going to get the farm down. Opponent can only get an Aqua Tail here. They're just not going to get there. Back in comes the Shadow Rhyperior. Shadow Rhyperior, I guess, has to try and hope for a farm down maybe. But even so, that's a tall task. They realize there's just no winning that game. And they are going to concede the match. Very bad lead in the next match. Articuno into Zacian. This team is ABA weak, going to switch in the best counter, which is going to be the Rhyperior, but no! A Waterfall Primarina hits the field of play. Rock Wrecker at the Primarina is going to be shielded, and he's just going to immediately resign the match. I can't blame him there, but it looks like he did get a 4-in-1 set. Moving into set 2, and our target has been acquired. Articuno into Zygarde. Opponent safe switches into Dawnwing's Necrozma. Dawnwings firing off a Dark Pulse, and that's going to be no shielded by the Articuno. Articuno looking to apply a debuff with the Icy Wind before switching out into the Palkia. Palkia can throw an Aqua Tail to deny the Moongeist Beam, and that's exactly what he does. That's a very nice play. This Aqua Tail is going to be shielded. The opponent wanting to get shields down. Zaire choosing to let this go. Moongeist, massive damage, but it will not KO. We're probably going to see the Zygarde re-enter the field of play here. Palkia not going to get the Spatial Rend, forced to settle for the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail not going to do a ton of damage. Articuno re-hits the field of play. Articuno, it looks like unfortunately does get the one-turn bring in there. These Ice Shards add up quite a bit. Opponent is going to switch into Ho-Oh. Ancient Power from the Articuno. Do they know about the coverage move? No, but that's the least damage I've ever seen a double super effective move do. Oh my goodness. Opponent did farm up to a potential Solar Beam. We see the shield. It is just going to be a Sacred Fire. The Sacred Fire does apply a debuff, though that's a 50-50 chance. Shadow Rhyperior not messing around, going for the Rock Wrecker, forcing the shield. This is going to be a Brave Bird fired by the Ho-Oh. Brave Bird will not KO. In comes the Zygarde, and Zygarde will immediately be met with a debuffed Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe is going to connect. Switch clocks up. In comes the Articuno. Articuno maybe could have made a move there. The opponent does not want to risk it. They go for the crunch. Back in comes the Rhyperior, but I think Rhyperior is just too low here. The Breaking Swipe is going to connect. In comes the Ho-Oh, and the Ho-Oh does get the farm down. That Sacred Fire debuff was extremely unfortunate, as without it, he could have just gone straight Breaking Swipe in that Ho-Oh matchup. Good lead leading into Enamorus. Opponent safe switches into Palkia. And there's basically one Enamorus team. It is Enamorus, Palkia, Rhyperior. So odds are we're going to see exact same backlines. The opponent actually Aqua Tail baits. That allows them to get to another Aqua Tail. It is going to be double resistant, so it won't KO from this range. So Zaire is able to tank that on fractional HP, exit with energy, and now we'll have a move loaded for whatever gets brought in. It's going to be the Enamorus firing off the double resistant Spatial Rend. That's not going to do a ton in the back. There it is. There is only one Enamorus team, and it's Enamorus, Palkia, and Rhyperior. But the opponent in a bit of an awkward spot. They're debuffed now. In comes the Shadow Rhyperior. You gotta hope they don't have the surprise nuke move that I sometimes like to run, which is Surf, and they do not, thank goodness. Breaking Swipe does apply the debuff. Some tough debuff luck for Zaire in these sets. Zaire, oh, he doesn't get the Simul KO. That is unfortunate, but this is only 4. You need 5 for the Rock Wrecker. It's just gonna be the Breaking Swipe, but there's an attack drop. No! And suddenly, this game might flip on its head because Articuno now doesn't have the damage output that it typically would. These Ice Shards doing noticeably less damage. Opponent is going to go for the fly. It is a debuffed fly, and they just make it to fly number 2. Articuno on its 5 cycle, but it has 2 residual, meaning it should be able to barely outpace here by the narrowest of margins. Articuno would have got that farm down if not for the Breaking Swipe debuff. Can it survive a Mud Slap? Yes, it can. Articuno flying high and taking the win. Picking up a pretty terrible lead in the next match, Articuno into Palkia. Save switch to the Shadow Rhyperior. Shadow Rhyperior does win the 1 shield and the 2 shield versus Palkia. That's just how strong this Pokemon is. Opponent will go for the Aqua Tail. They're going to switch out into their own Rhyperior, and that is the most effective way to neutralize Rhyperior energy, is just send in your own. Shadow Rock Wrecker is going to inflict some serious damage. Opponent, not wanting to take any more hits on the Rhyperior, will immediately fire off their Breaking Swipe. Rhyperior, can they get to the Rock Wrecker? The answer is yes. That is very unfortunate. Articuno tried for the farm down, but Rhyperior able to guarantee that final shield. And now down 2 shields. This is looking like a very difficult game to win. The switch into the Palkia. The opponent, I am very shocked. The opponent did not stay in with the Ho and Brave Birded. That would have been a pretty straightforward win con, but instead they switch in their own Palkia. A massive error. And now Palkia has back-to-back Aqua Tails loaded. At this point, you can just undertap the Aqua Tail here in case they try and go for the CMP tie, and we will see the opponent go for the extra Incinerate as they should in that scenario, and now they're going to fire off their energy. Opponent can't afford to debuff themselves with a Brave Bird. They're forced to go for the Sacred Fire. It KOs, but they are 1 Incinerate away still from the energy needed to win this game, and they cannot get there. Articuno doubled up on Ancient Powers, knocks Ho-Oh out of the sky, and secures a very improbable win. All right, we move to the next game. Articuno, oh no, the Ho-Oh returns. That's not what you're hoping to see. Shadow Rhyperior greets it as a safe swap, and the opponent is just going to go for a Brave Bird and dip. Even a resisted Brave Bird does a lot of damage to Shadow Rhyperior, so Rhyperior will commit the shield. Opponent switches in a Dusk Mane. And what is their third Pokemon if this is their best response to a Rhyperior with energy? Is it Dialga? Are they just running a Rhyperior doesn't exist team? They've now seen a Rhyperior, and they're very sad as a result. But Shadow Rhyperior is very happy to commit the final shield on the Sunsteel Strike, just to try and neutralize that Dusk Mane. Opponent has Zygarde. Zygarde definitely would have been the better Pokemon to switch in. I get the idea because the Dusk Mane, of course, is going to be a wall to the energy, but now you've lost switch advantage, and Zygarde is going to get absolutely destroyed by Articuno. Opponent is going to lose the CMP tie. Crunch not going to be able to pick up the knockout. In comes the Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh greeted with the Palkia, and Palkia, I mean, this is just very okay because even a Brave Bird won't KO a full health Palkia. That's part of why the Palkia Ho-Oh matchup is so one-sided, because even a Brave Bird will not knock out here. The opponent is going to go for the Brave Bird. It does not KO. Palkia can get a full farm down, and the opponent, oh, they're not even going to stay. They refuse to see their Zygarde get KO'd, so they will resign the match. Hopping into the final match, Articuno into Dialga. We're going to see a save switch to Rhyperior, answered with an Ice Fang, Zamazenta. Zamazenta, honestly, a scary Pokemon for both the Articuno and the Rhyperior to deal with. Rock Wrecker is going to be shielded. Zamazenta looking for a full farm down. The Breaking Swipe is reached, but Breaking Swipe will not be enough to knock out. Zamazenta is very bulky. It has the same stats as Zacian, so it's able to withstand the attack. In comes Articuno. Close combat will hit for massive neutral damage here. Opponent, oh, they're on Iron Head. Oh no! Iron Head is hitting for super effective damage. Iron Head followed by a close combat. There's an aggressive pivot into Dialga, and this is going to be a tough game to win. Palkia's going to have to put the team on its back, But first, it's going to be taking a lot of damage from this Dialga. Dialga is going to be firing off an Iron Head. That's going to be shielded by the Palkia. Palkia would love a farm down. I don't know if it's going to be possible, though, just barely. By the narrowest of margins, gets the farm down and has a ton of energy. You have to hope that Palkia energy will put in work in the back, and it's a Heatran. That's about the best thing you could ask for. Heatran can never farm you down. There was a weird visual glitch there since the opponent queued up the switch into the low health Zamazenta. The Aqua Tail didn't do that much damage to the Heatran. It did a normal amount of damage to the Heatran. Heatran now going to be hit with another Aqua Tail. Can the opponent... Oh, we see a switch and a catch! The switch into the Articuno. Opponent throws. They're not doubled up. They're one short, but they are going to go for an undercharge. Can Palkia get to the move? And the answer is no. Palkia tried what it could, but it gets KO'd by a Magma Storm. And unfortunately, that will be game over. But nevertheless, a 3-2 set for Zaire. All in all, these are some extremely entertaining battles, so many thanks to Zaire for sending them in. And if you haven't checked out his channel yet, make sure to do so. He posts videos a couple days a week, and he also streams a couple days a week as well. So some very enjoyable content over there. It goes without saying, as I mentioned at the start, Articuno not a Pokemon that I would recommend for climbing in the Master League. But hey, with careful gameplay, and with some very strong teammates, back-to-back positive sets were reached, which is honestly not something that I'd ever expect from an Articuno. One advantage Articuno does have is basically the entirety of the Master League meta is all too weak to ice. It's part of why Pokemon like Zamazenta can have success, because so many of the good Pokemon are going to be weak to ice. There's stuff like we saw Enamorus, we saw Tapu Bulu, Landorus, and Zygarde, of course, have the double weakness to ice. There's a Veltal, which we didn't see in these sets. Rhyperior is weak to ice. So there's a lot of Pokemon weak to ice across the board. Realistically, there isn't like an overtly strong, dominant top ice type meta threat at the moment, but it is something that I would love to potentially see in the future. I know the Kyurem forms are going to probably be arriving with Unova Tour, and with that, maybe we could see an ice type rise to a true meta dominant spot, and honestly, that's kind of what I'm hoping for, because I think ice damage overall in the Master League is definitely an underused niche at the moment, and there are so many teams that just do not respect it whatsoever. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.